Friends, welcome to Tech ARKIT YouTube channel. My name is Ravi. In this video session, we are going to see that Kubernetes cluster setup. So, which is going to be, I'm going to utilize the CentOS 7 step-by-step guide. So, if you already have the CentOS 7, so maybe you already have some desktop, you wanted to practice a Kubernetes, then how you can set up your home lab environment so that you can practice at the home. So here, what are the prerequisites you required to have Kubernetes cluster setup? So minimum two CentOS servers. So one is for a master, one is for a worker node. You can add more nodes as per the requirement. So if you want to set up a more containers or the pods on the cluster deployment, then you may need more worker nodes to deploy the pods. So that time you may need to add more worker nodes. So, but a basic setup for the cluster for the practice, you may need one master and one node. So I recommend to have one master, two worker nodes. That would be a most best version of the cluster. Master should have at least two CPU cores if you are using then a VMware workstation or the Oracle VirtualBox or anything sort. So you have to have the two CPU code for the master and a minimum one CPU and 4 GB RAM for the worker node. But actually the heavy lifting is done from the worker node, so you should have more codes from the worker nodes. So if you have the two CPU cores or four CPU cores and 16 GB RAM or 8 GB RAM, that would be more good for the worker node. So if you had, but for the basic setup and practice, this is enough. So for the home lab or the network setup, so you need to have the 10.x network should be available for the deployment. So basically it will automatically create it. So if you do not have such a thing, so you can create the virtual adapters or the virtual network on the um, VMware environments. Most of the time it does not require the control plane automatically deploy your network and allow port communications between the master and the worker node. So that how you allow this communication, I will show you on the practical scenario. So in this video, so we are going to learn these things. So creating the virtual machines using the VMware workstation. So you're already familiar with, you can skip that step, and installing the CentOS 7 OS. So how you can do that for the a minimal CentOS 7 requirement. So if you are familiar with or you already know how to install that, you can skip that part as well. And installing the VMware tools, so it will be for the more compatible for the with the VMware tools. So if we are using the VirtualBox or another virtualization platform, you can also skip that. Then the fourth, fifth, and sixth steps. So updating the CentOS patch levels, installing the master node, adding the worker nodes to the cluster. These are the steps you have to um, look at the video to understand how you can set up that. So if you are in a basic or the a normal beginner person, you have to follow all of these steps from first to last. If you already have some experience on the Linux environment you are already working, then you can skip until the third part and continue on the fourth part. Let's see on the practical scenario.
For more updates, click on subscribe and click on bell button for latest notifications.
The first step here is to create the virtual machine. So you can click on the create virtual machine and click next and select the compatibility version and click next, and do not install any operating system here. Just click next and select the Linux version and select the CentOS 7. So since we are running on CentOS 7, and give a virtual machine a name so that I can identify the virtual machine appropriately. Okay, next continue here. So it might be have the similar name, so not so okay. Maybe you can cancel it and add one or two over here so that it won't be conflict with the existing virtual machine. So that I have one. Then provide the codes, how many codes you require? Two, but I am adding the four codes here. So it might be have a 4 GB at 8 GB. So I have the resources. So I'm allocating this a 4 GB or 8 GB might be 4 GB would be enough. So now let's say NAT settings would be fine. Then sorry, it depends on your hard disk type. It will automatically give you the options and create the new virtual disk and next and provide the size is 40 GB is enough for the cluster. Okay, next and click customization and delete these printers and other stuff and save these settings. Okay, and click finish. So this is how you can create the virtual machine here. So after that, what you have to do is that you have to download a CentOS virtual machine and attach to that. So I'm going to create a one more virtual machine which for the worker nodes, right? So maybe we say cube node 1 2 something like that, so that we can have the other nodes here created, right? Next, and here also I'm allocating the four cores. I have the two processors, so 2 and 2 is become a 4. And NAT settings, the settings are similar to the all for the virtual machines, right? Then click finish. So now you have the other node is created. So you can click one more time and create the another node so that we'll have the three node cluster. One is in a master, two is in a worker nodes, right? So since I have the resources, I am allocating the more resources here. Worker node should have the heavy lifting, so I allocated the 8 GB RAM for them. So it depends on your um, hardware configuration and the space what you have on your workstation or your laptop or the desktop. So here are my three virtual machines. One is a master, two are the worker nodes. So now let's edit this master and attach the S4 file here. Okay, so I already downloaded the Centos 7 version and attach this one, right? So now click OK and try to install the operating system here. So anything is fine. So that is the version I have downloaded, right? So I can click on the run. Now select the install CentOS 7. Now it loads the screen. Let's see that. So once it loads here and click enter, so it will enter into the installation steps. So it takes a little time while loading for the first time. Okay, so now it's loading. So once the GUI loads, you will get the option to select and install the operating system. Okay, now select the language, your language and keyboard language. Now select the date and time. So since I am in India, so I selected the IST time zone and click done. Now language and keyboard is already selected and select the installation method, so which is a minimal software installation, and the for the hard disk partitioning, so you just say manually configured and click here to configure automatically and click done. So you don't need to specifically configure any partitions here, so that's why you just select that and KWS enabled. And the networking, you can just switch on the network, and if you get the DHCP IP address, then just configure it manually and disable the IPv6 to have confusions, and avoid the confusions and provide the IP address here. So it might be a different IP network for you. So it is 175 for me. Okay, so then it depends on your network. So you have to identify that by going into the configuration part and provide this DNS IP addresses and everything, and click save here and assign the host name. So it might be a Kubernetes master, which is a local name. I am going to give it here. So kubemaster dot takecarekt.local. So that is the naming I have on my local environment. So click apply so that the host name will be applied, and click done. And security policy, if it is enabled, then just disable it and click begin install, and set the root password. And for security purpose, create a new account and make it as an administrator, so that if you forget the root password, even you can just make it administrator to work, and switching back to the root and change the password, something like that, sometimes if required. So wait a few minutes, it depends on your configuration. So then it will take some time to complete this OS installation, right? So I might do the fast forward for the installation so that the video time will be reduced, and will get faster, but you have to wait a few minutes to complete this installation step. So it's almost completed performing the all the other steps and creating the init ramps and package installations. All is going to complete. After that, it will ask you for the reboot. You just click on this reboot button, and so that the machine will be rebooted and come back for the login prompt. Okay, so you have to follow the similar steps to install the worker nodes, both the worker nodes, right? And so I just click on this reboot button here so that my machine get rebooted. So now after the machine reboots, you get this prompt because we did not install any GUI here. So you have to log into the CLI, and what is the username password you have given while installing the operating system. You just provide those details and it will kick in. Then disable this SE Linux and permanently disable the SE Linux by going into the /etc SE Linux config file, and where it is enforced, change it to the disabled, and save this configuration file and do the reboot so that it will take the effect. Before that, you just run the m update so that it will update all the packages before we try to install anything here, so that it will fix all the bug fixes and patch level updates, anything. So it will so my update is completed, which is fast forwarded. Now let's try to reboot the machine so that you can get the uh, fresh clean machine after the installation is done, right? So that your SE Linux will be disabled mode. Now enter into the kernel settings, so which is actually the newly installed kernel after the update. So now again log in back with the same credentials. Now try to install the VMware tools here. So you right click on the virtual machine and say install VM tools. So it will mount the media, so the ISO file uh, into the location. So go into that location. Most of the times it's slash run location or the slash mnt location. Then copy this the VMware files to the temporary location, right? So this is the VMware file. I copy to the somewhere else to the temporary location and switch back to the temporary location and extract that tar file so that you can able to install that. So to install this, you need to have at least the Perl packages is already there, otherwise it will give you the error, something like this. You can see that the Perl is not installed, so you have to install the Perl module so that it start compiling those Perl. The VMware tools are compiled in the Perl. So you have to install that and rerun this VMware installation. So again, it requires some more packages to do that. So it will ask you the few questions. Click enter so that it will automatically cover up those details. Then after that, it will start initializing this VMware tools. Once your VMware tools installation is completed, then that's it. So your enjoy for the VMware tool so that you will get the screen wider and the mouse is flexible to use and the command line is also flexible to switch over between the VMs and drag and drop files. All these stuff features are enabled once you enable the VM tools. So it also requires sometimes restart. Um, if you restart or not, but it will take effect. But if you restart, it will actually take effect, so that we required. So now we are going to connect using the putty, so that it is easy for us to just copy paste those commands here, so that it will be a little bit faster to install the Kubernetes cluster. So first time, so we have to edit the host file and add your um, cluster master and node details here, so that you will get the ping. So I don't have any DNS environment here, so that's why I'm just manually adding those entries, so I can able to reach those nodes using the name by adding this entries here. So 192, 168, 175, 200 is my kube master node. I say that kube master, right? And again, I'm going to copy those names and just paste it and modify as a kube node 1, 2, right? Which is a 201 and 202, and which says kube node 1, and it's cube node 1, and here cube node 2, and here also cube node 2, and IP address is 202. So that's it. Save the file. So that it will add a little bit more flexible on pinging the virtual machines, the nodes using the names instead of remembering the IP addresses. So now what you have to do is that you have to allow the firewall ports to have the communication enabled between your worker nodes and the master nodes, so that either you can switch off your firewall service so that it won't require to allow you, but that is not a secure way to do that. So instead of that, I'm just adding the firewall, enabling the firewall ports, firewall CMD permanent, adding the port number, which is 6443, which is a TCP port. Enter. So by default, if you do not specify any zone, then it will by default you take the default zone. Okay, so here 2379, which is the port number, to 2380, which is the range of ports I have allowed. Now again allow the 10250 TCP, which are all required for your Kubernetes cluster communication. 205 10251, 10252, 10255. That's it. And reload your firewall settings to take effect your whatever the ports you have allowed. So now modified your module details so that it will get modified on the kernel. So mod prop br underscore net filters, so which is actually the module which requires on your kernel to be activate. Okay, and change the settings to one, which is echo 1 slash proc sys net bridge slash bridge nf call IP tables. So it is actually the settings you need to make change for the IP tables to modify for the communications whenever you make the plain configuration. So it is required for that. So now create a new file in slash etc m.repos.de kubernetes.repo and paste this content over there. So for the Kubernetes installation, right? So this is actually available on the Git repository, which is given in the description below, and remove the any existing Docker which is available, and install the Kubeadm Docker, right? So, which is not actually a Docker, actually a Docker C you have to install, but I'm just installing the Docker to show you some errors. So, if you are installing the wrong packages, the cluster might not run. So, it give you a trouble while installing the settings. So, that's why I just install the Docker instead of Docker CE. So, I'm trying to set up this with this so that it will give you the some errors, and again we have to reinstall the proper packages. Okay, so let's try to do that. Systemctl enable kubelet, systemctl enable the docker here, and so you have to start the service again. Systemctl start kubelet and systemctl start docker, right? So here the container D is not installed, so that only the Docker is installed, but you cannot able to make any container D. So you have to switch up the swap to avoid the confusions with the application. So Kubernetes is not very well gelled with the swap, so that you have to switch off. For the first initializing the Kubeadm, so you have to do this command Kubeadm int. So you will get this error, container runtime is not installed. So you try to do this configuration file. It is because there is no configuration files exist because the container D is not installed yet. So in order to do that, so you have to reinstall the packages, which is m install m utilities. So the m utilities you need to enable for the installing the additional packages. M install, so config manager, you have to install this Docker versions. Okay, so now I'm going to add the new repository here, add repo, and which is going to be the docker ce.repo, right? So the repo is configured. Now install the docker ce and docker cli and containerd.io, right? Because I already installed the wrong packages, which is giving me that, oh, so you have the conflict. So let's try to skip the broken packages, so that go ahead and install the required packages here. So let's try to the above command again, add the skip broken here, so which will install the packages, right? It's going say yes. So for the downloading and installing, it takes a little time based on your internet speed. So it's completed. You can see that now, and enable the docker and enable the container D service, right? And try to restart the container. So now we can see that the container D is not installed properly. So again, try to install that container D package. So m install the container D. Now you can see that docker c20 version and the container D is trying to install. So if the container D is not properly installed, then if you install the packages multiple times also, it won't actually start or initialize the Kubeadm. So if you do not initialize the Kubeadm, so your cluster would not be set up properly. So that's why, so you have to remember that, so these packages should be installed. So the container D Docker should be properly installed. So system start Docker, enable the container D as well, and start the both the services. Start container D. So if this start service is started and listening properly, then your 50% problem is resolved. Again, there's a one more service called Kubelet, which should be running state. Otherwise, you will get errors. So if you again container D is properly set up, but you are getting the error, so you just delete this file, config file, um, then try to reinitialize, so it will work, because that is the default configuration files which is set up. So you just remove that and initialize the Kubeadm init, which is initializing Kubeadm, and it will take a few minutes. Then after that, it will give you that the cluster installation is completed, and it will give you the some commands to set up your environment. So this is one cube control plan initialization successfully. Now we copy those below commands and paste it somewhere on notepad, so it is literally it required for your configuration. Okay, so this is required. So now just try to copy paste this, and your cube setup will be ready. So this is the environment variable, so which required to be set up for you to run the kube commands, kubectl commands. So now just try to run some kubectl get nodes, so that let's see that whether our Kubeadm setup is done. So now it's done, but you can see that the status is not ready because the control plane is set up, but there is no network has been set up properly. So to do that, so I have the kube panel ml file. So what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to clone that git repository and going into that directory and initialize that file. So run that YAML file. So you can also try to run that from the internet, but that was not working properly. So that I'm manually initializing that kubectl apply -f and provide the file location where is your file is located, the YAML file, which is actually initialize your networking setup for your master node and the other nodes. So you can say kubectl get nodes. So now you can see that which is not ready. So it will take a maybe 1 minute or 2 minutes to get all the pods running. Then all namespaces you can set that okay, so it's not ready still. Sometimes it will get ready. Get nodes, you can see that now the master node is ready. So our first step is completed. So you can able to see that your master node is initialized successfully. Now let's try to do the worker node. So I'm just logged into the worker node, and I set up this /etc/host names here, and SE Linux is disabled, and m update. So this run the m update. So I already run the m updates in the first step. It's why so there's no updates here, and allow the firewall communication, so that you have to enable the few ports communication from your client as well, so that you could able to communicate with your master node. Firewall CMD -hyphen permanent, add the port number 6783, which is a TCP port number, and add another port. It's 10250 10255 3000 30,000, and there is a range which required to run the ports communications, enabling and reload the firewall settings. So it takes effect. Now again you have to enable that IP table filters, right? So it's net bridge. So sometimes it might be not installed, so that you'll get that there is no such a file or directory at the location. So don't worry about that. Sometimes because it is not properly, the packages sometimes is not properly installed, so that you don't get any AV tables files. So don't worry about that sometimes. So you have to manually create the file and add those settings, right? So there is no file here. So try to don't worry about that. So sometimes let's say um, issue with the packages properly not installed. don't worry about that. Now let's move forward and add the repository slash etc slash ms repos.d and Kubernetes and .repo, any name you can give it here, and paste the repository configuration and save that. And you have to install the um, kubelet here and Docker as well, so that you can set up the node. First of all, you have to install the m utilities, m install m utils, so which is enable your utilities to fetch more packages, right? So now we can add the Docker repository here and install the Docker and containerd packages, which is required for you to run the pods on the worker node, right? These are the packages. So now you can see another install the Kubeadm, which is required for your Kubernetes. You can see we just install the kubelet as well, right? And systemctl enable the Docker and enable the containerd as well. Otherwise, it will give you the error. So systemctl enable kubelet, start the kubelet, right? So now our services has been enabled. So here we have already copied those command, right? Just copy paste this command. So which to join your node, worker node to the cluster. So you are getting some error here. So container error. So you have to delete that file and restart the containerd service. So it won't run again. So restart this. Restart containerd, right? Try to run it again. So now you can see. So then now the node is going to join to the cluster. So sometimes if it is break in between here, so I got some errors here while adding the node to the cluster, so it does not actually joined in the first run because my kubelet was not properly running on this worker node. So then it went into the issues. So then after that I have done some troubleshooting steps, so I did not cut those video here because those troubleshooting steps might be helpful for you. So let's see that you can see that here you get some connection refused issue, so you're not able to make this node to join to your cube master. So master is not able to communicate with this, so it's not able to initiate the connection with this 10248 port number, right? So then what I did is that I just made the some troubleshooting steps here. So let this finish and start some troubleshooting here. So now you can see that timeout waiting for the condition. So you have to make the swap f on this, then check that the kubelet is running fine or not. Okay, the status of the kubelet. So the kubelet is not running. So that's why you're not able to join this to the domain. So you can see that the kubelet is having some problem to start. It does not have some configuration is missing or something is missing, so I could not able to start this kubelet here. So let's see some logs on the kubelet on the messages, see what is going on with this node so that I can able to troubleshoot. So here if I get some configuration settings from here, and you can see that it says that some configuration error, something like that. But what I did is that I just moved this kubelet configuration to the admin, right? And I have copied this file and try to copy those settings, setting those environment here, and you can see that the cube config file is not exist, so there is no .cube directory is exist, so I could not able to make that. So it is not these perfect settings for that. Okay, so now let's try to change these permissions. Does it help? Okay, so it is successful, and let's try to check this, restart this kubelet service. So that make any difference here? Like check the status. No, it's not running. Okay, so something went wrong here. So the result exit code is not right. So now let's see this again. Try to start that instead of restarting the kubelet, and just try to start that. Oh, it takes some time. Maybe this time it's getting perfect. No, it's not. So now, um, finally, so I got this status running. Now you can try to join this. Now you can see the cube has been, so the node has been joined to the cluster. You can see that the master and the node is joined. So maybe after few minutes, the node gets to ready state. So that's all about the Kubernetes cluster setup. And if you get those errors, don't worry about that and make your troubleshooting so that you could able to work. Sometimes if you are a beginner for the first time, sometimes it may not work perfectly, but troubleshoot those steps which is required for the troubleshooting, then make it happen so that you could able to set up successfully. Best of luck. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. Please subscribe to the channel for more upcoming videos and courses.